Hey, everybody, welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast focused on culture, communication, wellness, and relationships. I'm the host, Dr. Mo Anderson, and my goal is to help you stress less, produce more, and love the ones you're with. This episode, my guest is Linda Jones, aka the Writing Doula. Linda is a veteran journalist, award-winning news reporter, writing coach, and certified grief recovery practitioner. She recently launched a very interesting legacy writing course. She wants to help others write their own life stories and preserve their personal history in their own words. If you've never ever considered journal writing, or no matter what age, going ahead and writing your own obituary, you need to stay tuned to find out why now is exactly the time to do so.
You can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear magnifies the consequences of failure. What are you scared of? Why are you afraid? I'd rather live like I'm dying than live to die. Any day, my heart is pure, my soul is safe.
All right, Linda Jones, welcome to Perpetual Motion.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. You're doing a lot of amazing things. You clearly have a great passion for writing. You've been a journalist, a news reporter, writing coach, and now you're a writing teacher. When did your love of all things writing begin?
It was so seamless. It began when I was a child, and it began with a love of reading or a curiosity. And as writing as a practice, what marked it for me was when my mother gave me a diary when I was in the 8th grade.
Oh, yeah. Did you have a little key? Did you have one with a little key?
You know, I remember those keys. I used to say, anybody can get in those things. I knew right then. It's like, no, I didn't have a key. And maybe that was by design. So, but that marked the time where I remember recording and documenting in the 8th grade. So I must have written before, to prompt my mother to want to give me a diary.
Right. She recognized that in you. Cool. I had a little, I remember my mom getting it for me. They had a little key to it, which you were smarter than I was. I thought I had some privacy. At some point, girl, I realized my parents were reading my diary. And so I just started writing all kind of outlandish, ridiculous stuff.
Oh, I used to write in code. Later, just little names or signals, things that I could remember, but nobody else would know. But it's not like anything was so heavy at that time.
But yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people are journaling now. They might not want to say they have a diary, but in a sense, we're still just, recording our stories for posterity.
And well, I learned the difference too, if there is much of a difference, when I was in high school. And that's when I was told in one summer, creative writing, my first creative writing exposure and all that at the summer writing program. And there was a creative writing session, and she taught us journaling. Mm-hmm. So this is where we get to record our feelings. Before I was recording a lot of events.
Activities, right.
We went to the dance, and et cetera. Now it's like, so how did you feel about that?
Right. Therapeutic. Absolutely. And at that camp or elsewhere, what was the first thing you wrote that you really felt good about, that you knew, a short story, a poem, or wherever, where you just hit it out the park? For us non-athletes, there's some things we do with writing people don't understand, where you just know, I killed it.
I wouldn't, because I was so, I guess, critical of my work or shy about my work, that I wouldn't think hitting out the park. But the most memorable, I still have that notebook or journal from the 70s. And I remember I was first introduced to haiku. And I don't remember the units exactly, but it was about being shy in that class with these new people. So I said something about sitting here. If I try to cough, if I happen to cough, someone might turn around and look at me.
Oh,
and yeah, and it was reflected a shyness when I look back on it. And another thing that I remember out of there that just marked history was Ginger, this white woman in our class, a white girl, all of us were kids then, who was the hippie. She was a hippie. That was my first experience with a hippie, long, straight, blonde hair, right? And according to, the stereotype, but she wore jeans every day, the same jeans every day. And I used to write about that moral white, that was like.
Those are actually quite fashionable now, staying the tone.
Exactly.
She was ahead of her time. She's bohemian now.
I know. And that's what, and she was then, but I'm from Akron, Ohio, and we saw, from our neighborhood, we saw, particular things, we dress a particular way.
Right.
And nobody would ever wear the same jeans every day of that week, almost the summer, right? So in a t-shirt.
So clearly she made an impression.
Yes.
And now you're quite a free spirit. I bet somebody right now is somewhere telling a story about Linda.
About my jeans. And when is she going to change
the bald head or the reinvention? You are quite a trendsetter yourself, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Oh my goodness.
Many people have a fear of writing. Now you're humble. I get that and even for me, I want to be clear that when I said a moment where you felt that, for me, it was in an English class when I was in middle school, and I wrote it and I just got a grade back. Nobody knew. It wasn't that it was applauded or lauded, but I just knew that once I got that validation from the teacher, even that, okay, maybe this is something I could do because I love it, but am I good at it? Because that's two different things,
Right. But those comments from the teacher.
Yeah.
The comments that I got helped me know that, maybe I had something here.
Yeah. They can, teachers play such an important role. I got a lot of respect for them, whether you're teaching children or adults, such a gift. And you can really, really change the course of somebody's life with your feedback. So many people have a fear of writing, I was saying, and I don't. But I understand that, and I was surprised we discussed this. I know a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, that's well known, but the fear of writing you mentioned to me, and I hadn't really thought about that. Tell me about that.
I call it the red pen syndrome. And I often said that, I thought I was clever and this is something that I thought of, but I saw where a teacher referred to it as that. But the difference is I use it when I'm referring to people who fear writing, not teachers who are overzealous about marking up the paper, but the people who are affected by that in a way that carries over. When you get your paper back, that's great. And if you had any of those experiences, you were probably such a great writer. You didn't get a lot of.
I just got a book back that was bleeding. That's what we call it now, bleeding. So no, ma'am, I'm not over that. And I'm not trying to get to the point in my life where there's no room for improvement. So it hurts though. Woo.
Well, I laugh every time I mention it because there was this guy in my class, it was fifth grade, John, and you just hear these blood-curdling screams or these comments because he was always getting his paper marked up full of red marks. But really, and seriously though, you think about it, the teachers, they were respected. And if they marked it wrong, it was wrong. So you may think, and if you got that a lot, young people don't think at the time that it's correcting, helping make you better.
Right.
It's just wrong. Right. So that can carry over with people feeling inadequate about their writing. Oh, maybe it's not good enough or all of that. So I jokingly, but not so jokingly say, I can help you work through that red pen syndrome and put those things in context. It's correcting to make you better. And even to this day, just like you said, your manuscripts are marked up and so forth. It's all more for improvement, not saying that you're inadequate, but helping to make what you do better. The people do have real anxiety about, like I do, and I have. As a reporter, I have told the story often about when I'm on deadline. And at the time, here I'll date myself because we were using Selectric typewriters, not carrying around laptops in the beginning.
Right.
So I couldn't just write the story while I'm sitting at a meeting. I had to wait till they finished, when I was covering municipal government, wait till they finished pontificating about everything and finally take action. Then I had to rush to the newspaper to get, with whatever time I had left, to put a story together that made sense. I wasn't a fast writer because I was so intense in terms of wanting to make everything just so and right and all that. So I'd have a lot of anxiety about whether I was going to get it together in time, to the point to where, and this is where I understood later what anxiety is, when you start thinking crazy things, like, if I could just run into a tree and hurt myself.
Goodness.
And hurt myself just so much. No suicidal thoughts. No suicidal thoughts. Just
I understand what you said. Just enough injury that I don't have to do this.
Yes, to have a good excuse not to make deadline.
But you did again and again, because you are an award-winning journalist. So and that's part of the growing pains. I'm sure it wasn't always like that, but as you got more comfortable with what you were doing, and obviously as we got better electronics, that helped as well, right?
Well, my fantasies were more realistic. They're not fantasies, but hopes. I recently was on a deadline. Now, this is years and decades later, right? Okay. I'm still having anxiety. So I contemplated going downstairs to jump out the window.
You just wanted a sprained ankle, not a broken leg. Understood.
And I was going to open the window and go to the one where the grass was. So it's better. It's still anxiety. But then I've learned, you know what? This is part of my writing process.
Right. And for all of us who write, just it's the birth of a child is the other thing.
Yes.
I don't understand sometimes when they are so brutally critical on some of these reviews, the time and effort that's put into the writing, but it is what it is. And if you want to live a public life, you have to be prepared for a public hanging.
Yes. Oh, the flashbacks. You're triggering me. Okay.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But I appreciate you sharing too, that even as a writer, a professional who's been paid to do it, written for major dailies, major publications, that there's still some anxiety involved. That's real. That's real. And so speaking of your journalism days, you started out early on writing obituaries. There's a lot of that's often the assignment, or one of the assignments of a lot of young reporters. And so you got to see firsthand how, and we're leading up to talking about your Afro obituary writing course, because I said that, but I don't want it to sound like I'm just randomly going to obituaries. But so you got to see kind of firsthand how most people approach this process after a loved one dies, I would assume. Tell me what you saw when you were, taking this information and writing obituaries for people.
Okay. We had sort of a rotating beat, call it the obit beat or something, I don't know, rotation. Mm-hmm. And that meant that I had to, as young reporters, we had to wait for the calls from the funeral home, that they would give us information that someone had passed away and give us that information that the family provided them. And we would take that and put it into a story. Now, there's a difference. The obituaries that show in the paper, those stories, we would write those. Oftentimes they were about people in the community who might be, well known in the community, not nationally known necessarily, but well known. Right. There's the death notices that are those paid ads that people put in. But the process for us to write that story was to get the information from the funeral home representative and then go and call the family member to get additional information to round out our story. And I would find oftentimes that they didn't have all the information that would have been helpful for us to make a more complete story.
Sure.
Wouldn't remember dates and things like that. So as a writer, we had to do the best we could to write what I call writing around it. You still write a story, but you represent it as the best you can with the information that you have. Now, it was clear, I knew that some people were guessing because, sometimes they may say, oh, well, just put that down. Or, I think so, what do you do in a situation like that? It's not like I'm going to cover someone, a public official, and they'll say, oh, just put that. And I'll say, no, I need details. I need this. Right. That doesn't sound quite right. You don't do that when you're writing an obituary. So I know firsthand how misinformation goes into obituary. And those are situations where it's not always the press who's getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. It's the people who are not remembering, and sometimes they're grieving. They're distracted. They don't remember. And it's a lot of things to do at one time. So many things go into that.
Right.
What I learned, it was a good rite of passage for me as a young journalist, because I learned to be very careful with these people's lives that I was writing about. It's a stranger to me, but they're not strangers to the people that I'm writing about. So we want to take care to represent them well. So that's why I kind of have this thing about.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's important. And, celebrities, Betty White passed recently, and an hour later, they already had, had her story together, and people think somebody just did that. But in fact, they're pre-written, right?
They are pre-written. That's the thing that I used to wonder. How did they get that out so fast? These long, textured stories. Yes. The way they do that is what we call writing the bottom. Mm-hmm. If you're a celebrity, newspapers and, we know eventually they're going to go like everybody. But do we want to be caught at the last minute running around trying to talk to people who knew them, trying to find them, to turn that story out in the next day? So we would write the bottom, and the bottom is that existing information. We know she was born. That's not going to change. So we put that information and we write enough of the story, the things that she's accomplished, using Betty White as an example. They already have a file. They have a story already written about her death. Mm-hmm. They just don't have information about her death because she's still living. But when her death happened, it's just a matter of updating that, putting this is when she passed, right? And then updating it to the point to where you already have contact information, who knows her and so forth. These bottoms that are written are often updated along the way, as things change. Right. But so when that event happens at transition, you're not left with nothing and starting from scratch. So my approach, with helping others is let me show you how to write the bottom. And trying to convince them or get them to think that we're not dwelling on death. We're not writing about death. We're here. We don't know, but let's represent your life well. Let's write the bottom of your story that you continue to update.
I lost 4 relatives in the past 11 months. In fact, we just buried my cousin on Friday. And so I have been, of course, experienced loss before, but I have been through that experience very recently of trying to remember, where they went to school and lived, and achievements and church and volunteer work. And it's a lot. And to have that already document it. I mean, where you went to college is where you went to college. Where, that can already be spelled out and
evergreen.
Yeah, your civic involvement, kids, grandkids. And the other thing I see a lot with what I love about what you're doing with the Afro obituary is that you get into these arguments with the family about who should be acknowledged, who should be mentioned. And, you've got stepkids and other wives and all of that stuff. You can decide for yourself who you want mentioned, who you don't want mentioned, or whatever. It makes so much sense to preserve that. And I applaud you for encouraging people to do that, because we're losing history. We're losing our stories because we just think people know. I thought about it as we were talking about this. I don't know that my kids know I was used to live in Houston.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It was for a brief time, but I'm not sure that they know that. So,
Did I tell you that I did this live? Well, I was doing the live workshops before I created Afro Obituary. I did it at a family reunion. And what I would have them do is read the bio part after we finish drafting it out, because interesting pieces of history that other family members get to hear. Well, there was one, and this was my family. I've done these things at family reunions, but this was at my particular family reunion. And a cousin who was the youngest of, I believe, 5 or 6 people, siblings. When she finished reading hers, her eldest sister she was sitting that way at the other end of the table. She leaned over and said, "I didn't know that was your middle name."
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So that we can't even assume that when you think about it, she's the eldest and all the other ones came afterwards, and everybody, has nicknames for you.
Right. And you don't use your middle name most of the time.
You use just the middle name. So she said, "I didn't know that was your middle name." And I was saying to myself, another affirmation that what I'm doing is necessary or is helpful.
Absolutely. And you just gave me a great idea for something to do at our next family reunion as well. I love that idea of writing your bio and sharing it with the family.
Right. Right.
So you were doing these, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
You were doing these workshops, live courses, and then is that what led you to develop the Afro Obituary Legacy Writing course that you have now?
Yes. Two things, yes. The selfie obituary or self-written obituary workshops, multicultural, grief and death and all these things affect everyone. Sure. And the workshops, that's what the workshops were. But I decided that I wanted to do something that focused on encouraging African Americans to play more of a role in telling their legacy stories. All types of them. So the Afro obituary legacy writing is a focus on the obituary, particularly the obituary and legacy letters. Obituary, particularly for the reason, discussed before, so much of our information goes down wrong. And we come from a history where sometimes we're scrambling to know our history. We can only go so far back in Africa or just go to the continent because we don't know. So here we can begin to be more of stewards of our stories and our history. So that's what drove me to do this, to get us involved more, also to play a part in having our stories represented. And in the context of what's happening right now with efforts to keep us from telling our stories and our history and so forth. What better time? I'm not saying I didn't create this because of the anti-critical race theory madness that's going on, but what better time to make people aware of how important it is to document your stories and to keep them going, in spite of efforts to squash them. Yes, really so important. You're just bringing up a lot of really good points here, and I hope prompting people to think about their legacy, their narrative, their personal history. We think about 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and that's great for going back, whether it's to the west coast of Africa or to Ireland or wherever. But there's,
present history, current history that we're losing as well. While we're researching that, you don't know your sister's middle name. So,
right. Yeah. And we're writing our history now. We can't think, oh, well, I'm nobody or my history is nothing. The people who are somebody used to be nobodies,
yes,
right?
We matter.
So
we matter.
Yes. So just document your story. Don't think performative or anything. Just document the stuff. It's worth it. It's worth it. And for people who are squeamish about, I'm not going to write my obituary, right? Well, can you just fill out the forms? The forms in my course, I have what I call legacy resource forms, where you just get your information down so you can help that person who will be honoring who will have the honor of paying respect and showing respect by writing your story. Why have them stress out trying to remember stuff, right?
Anything I can do to make it easier, planned more funerals than I want to talk about. Anything I can do to make it easier for my loved ones when I'm gone on, because it is a very difficult time, and trying to go through somebody's drawers and bills and find a birth certificate in a box and stuff.
Yes. And it's such an emotional time too.
Yeah.
There was someone who I was writing an obituary for one woman who was very angry with her brothers because she didn't feel they were present enough to help with their mother. Mm-hmm. And people grieve differently and they can't handle it. Sometimes they leaned on her because she handled things so well. Right. Well, when it was time to write, the family members, she did not want me to put those brothers in there. Mm. And she was adamant, and I just took a breath. I said, okay, I got it ready for her to yell and bite my head off. But I said, can you trust me on this? Think of it as history, right? And you don't want your son looking later in this and saying, where's Uncle so-and-so? How come they're not here? And you guys might make up. So she let me include them, and they did make up. And she says she's grateful that, that information, while she was out of her, she was
on raw emotion, and you which is why you shouldn't make any major decisions those times, because you're not thinking long term. You're just thinking, my feelings are hurt and what can I do right now. And I always remind people too that says something about you as well, not just the person you leave out, but remember, other people don't know all of that. They don't know.
Yes.
They don't know the background. So now you're just looking petty.
Yeah.
Looking petty. So if for no other reason, represent yourself well, and don't feel like you have to tell everybody, your drama, but just represent yourself and your loved one well. So I'm glad you were there. You need people around you like that who, kind of calmly say, look, I'm not taking sides here, but let's look at the big picture. That's a great example.
Thank you. I'm hoping people will take this course, and it's for them to write their own, but it also teaches you, it helps you show you how to write for others. Mm-hmm. And I hope it lights a fire under them so they could say, look, Mama, you need to do this. Look, cousin, you need to do this.
Right.
And you need to, or at least get the stuff down and have the language to say, I want to represent you well. So can you cooperate with me?
Right. And I'm in the process of taking it. I love the modules, and the videos are short, and the worksheets that you provided, and I appreciate you sharing it with me so that I can speak with authority about it. It is very, very helpful to be able to do those biographical summaries, just to not have to think of what else do I need to include, or Google a whole bunch of blogs about it, to have it in a very concise, efficient form. Yeah, I really like it. And I don't just endorse everything, let the record show. So
thank you.
Love what you're doing here.
That makes me feel so good. Knowing your background, we go back and that you are a writer. So you're keen to certain things, noticing and seeing certain things. Mm-hmm. I agonized over this to make it as tight as I could and understandable. So it means a lot that you say that.
Very, very well done. It's very well done. Yeah. So one of your programs is called the Rebirth Writing Experience, where participants tap into the therapeutic and healing power of writing. Why is this important, and how does it work?
Okay. A lot of the writing that we do is writing for an audience to, writing for the workplace and writing to get something like a job or some opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it can be that anxiety and that kind of writing. This writing is it's expressive writing. It's writing where you, once again, we go back to journaling and not diary event writing, mm-hmm. right? You get to pour your emotions and thoughts on paper or onto the computer screen or what have you, but get those things that are pressing out of you. And some people may think, oh, well, that's nothing. But when you think about talking to a friend, and after you sort of dump on them and tell them, pour your heart out, things that are bothering you, oftentimes people say afterwards, oh, I feel better after that, right?
Yeah.
The difference, not much of a difference, but it's an important difference, I think, is that paper is not going to judge you one bit. Where a friend might not judge, but may feel, oh, this or that, or sometimes people feel vulnerable because after they poured their hearts out in a sense of being really vulnerable, oh, I shouldn't have said all of that. What if so-and-so gets mad at me or what have you?
Or if they tell someone, what if they tell someone?
Right. So this writing, it's this non-judgmental this paper, this canvas that you can dump your feelings and your pain onto and feel better for it. And it's not just a pastime. It has been clinically proven, medically proven, that a regular practice of expressive writing your thoughts and your feelings down can help mitigate certain health challenges like stress. That's why I describe what I do as sort of mood massaging kind of writing and things, mood stabilizing writing, or help you navigate depression, grief. And in this age of COVID, this type of writing helps to boost the immune system. Mm-hmm. So why not play a role in nurturing, along with your vitamin D and your, black seed oil and everything else? Why not just do this mindfulness writing and so forth? So Rebirth experience is what I call an expedition. I take people on through different phases of writing to help them work through some things, help them reflect, help them purge some things, hopefully. And in using the metaphor of a garden, where when a garden is neglected and is depleted, you know how that garden can look. Sometimes we feel that way. So what do we do? These are things that once we root out, pull the weeds out with this writing process and so forth. Now, okay, we have this garden with weeds pulled out. So now we have to replenish it. So there's this type of writing and aspirational writing things I take them through. So I take them through this journey. When you do this kind of work, it's not like if I'm teaching somebody how to code or fix a car, they can walk away with, I know how to fix a car. But when you're saying this mindfulness stuff and writing, people think it's woo-woo and all that, but what do they walk away with? Well, you walk away with enough to be able to create your own, what I call it a dispensary. Play on words, the pen in the center of it, a dispensary of writing activities that you can use to create your own writing practice to address what you might be going through.
I see.
Right. And I call it, you can write a penscription for yourself to develop your writing practice. So that's what the Rebirth writing experience is. Rebirth to kind of help get you unstuck and not only maybe help you kind of get over that or stabilize you through a certain situation.
Right, stabilize.
And also help you monitor yourself or maintain. It's like a maintenance program you have for yourself through writing that might help you keep from having to take that one extra nerve pill or something like that. I'm not saying replace anything. I don't mess around with the doctor. But
When we're in a good mood, though, it does. I just literally just did a workshop on the medical benefits of humor. And when you're,
Oh, yes.
yeah, when you're in a good place and your mood is stabilized, it helps your pain perception. It
Yes.
releases endorphins and so many other physiological changes take place. So it's definitely real and research that, my tagline is mad is bad. So sad is bad. We can add to that as well.
Yes.
And there are a lot of things we can do for ourselves that we don't always do, whether it's the writing practice, the eating right, the getting sunlight, just walking. There's so many things we can employ and not so quickly turn to artificial stimulants and depressants. And I'm not against those. Prescriptions can be very helpful, but that doesn't have to be the only way that we can get better. This makes me think about, I believe you're working with some people from India, the dalits. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Dalits, right. The dalits are it's a caste system, of course, right? I always say it wrong, caste or caste. Caste system, and they're bottom rung. That's the best way they're bottom rung in the case. The lower class, I hesitate because I hate even using those terms, but that's how they are perceived. They're like Black people are treated in America in many ways, but maybe worse. Because this is how you're born. So this is a community that, it's very poor, and you expect dalits to be the ones. They're oftentimes of color, and they're the ones that are cleaning up the mess and so forth.
Darker skinned when you say
darker skin. Okay, not always Black. Some are very dark, but they're oftentimes, as you see here. We may not notice as much, but as you see here, it's a color case here oftentimes too. But I was contacted by a member of there's an organization, the Amdekar International, where it's an anti-caste organization. And they wanted to start a program to have, get writings from dalits and have them share their experience. And it was writings they were looking toward a book, having them write some material, and then they would select somebody to help them write a book. So I did a workshop for that group with the group of people they had selected. Then after that, one of the members decided he wanted to take it further and hired me to do a 6-week program.
Awesome.
For him. Yes. And I just spoke to him last week, and he wants me to do something in April, another 4-week thing. And it was some powerful stuff. What I recommended, because I was toward book or publishing something, I said, can we break it off and let's start out with letting them do expressive writing, connect with themselves first, and not have the pressure of thinking that they have to write an essay or something like that to be out there, so they can just feel free to say how they feel. And there were some powerful things coming out, and it was an honor for me to work with them. Powerful stuff. So the workshop, part of it was expressive, and then we moved into let's show you how to write an essay, a narrative essay that you can perhaps publish or whatever. So that's the work I was doing with them. Yeah.
So, and I try to pause along the way as I do these podcasts. If there's a terminology I think people might not be familiar with, would you describe expressive writing as opposed to the essay type of writing or other types of writing? Because you've used that term a few times, and I know what it means, but I want to make sure everyone understands what expressive writing is.
Expressive writing, and the phrase was coined by James Pennebaker, who's a social psychologist, and it is the writing where you're expressing your thoughts and your feelings. You're going there. And you try not to do it without judgment, right? It is not, essay has structure, depending on narrative essay, story, beginning, middle, end, sort of thing. Narrative essays. With expressive writing, there are no rules.
So it's more a stream of consciousness, just
stream of consciousness.
Thoughts you have or feelings.
That's why I put the mindfulness part in it too, because it's like when I would tell people oftentimes so first let's kind of warm up and do some free writing. And when some of them would share their free writing, it really wasn't free. It was more.
Ooh, that's a tweet right there. Even my writing isn't free. You've been in bondage more than 400 years. If your writing's not even free.
Writing wasn't free because it was obligatory. They're feeling, here's a teacher saying, let's do this. And then you're going to read it. So, and I'm hearing it. So I found myself more often, I would free write with them. And then when I'd hear stuff that was almost performative, I said, okay, I don't think your writing's really free. I don't think you're listening to what your mind, I said, whatever comes into your mind, write it down. And you say edit it and say, no, I'm not going to put this down. I'm going to put this down. I just spit out whatever comes to your mind. Listen to what I just wrote. And sometimes when they hear the mess that I just read to them or the disjointed or the wanderings, I said, that's what I'm saying. What comes to your mind? Because I want us to kind of check in and kind of loosen up. That's why with the Indian group, because oftentimes it's so regimented, how studious, I'm not trying to stereotype, but generally, there's a particular attention paid to this study and this particular sciences and so forth. So it's hard to get folks to free write right there because they're feeling, So it's a process to get people to just kind of relax into themselves. In my expressive writing courses, if it sounds like somebody's being performative, because you can tell, I said, well, the audience is you. I might be listening to instructor, but no. If you want to go for the public and maybe take this out later, yes, but no, this is internal. And it's like, stop performing, just express.
Well, and as I think about it, it makes me think about what I get in my parallel in my life is doing workshops for corporate people. You have the people who are genuinely interested in what you're saying and want to learn more. And then you have the other people who are asking, fake questions because they're really just trying to impress everybody that they know more than you. So,
the speech is right.
Right. Exactly. So it's, and people recognize that, for what it is. You're not really interested in learning anything. You just, you want to be the object of the attention or just.
These, and some people, once again, they'll think this stuff is woo, this writing is expressive and feelings and thoughts, but that's the kind of thing I do writing for. It also has to do with emotional intelligence. As Rakim says, knowledge of self, that's all it is. And corporations and so forth, they're looking more for people who have knowledge of self and are able to interact with other people. And you can do that better if you know yourself and know how to monitor and check in, all this kind of thing. So this type of writing helps develop emotional intelligence because you're connecting with yourself, sitting with yourself. People don't sit with themselves anymore. No. So taking time for this kind of writing, that's why I said, no, you're performing. Let's start again. Nope.
You're performing. Absolutely. That's good. And we don't spend enough time just in reflection. We got the phone going. There's always some type of device, some type of distraction. And I think, in addition to red pen syndrome, there's a fear of what's really going on with me. What am I really thinking? Do I even want to know what I'm really thinking and feeling? Because then I'll have to address it. So let's just not.
Yes. And that's why if you're going to address it, the paper isn't judging you. It's not judging you. You get it down. And you don't have to solve any problems, but oftentimes problems get solved by
naturally
just getting the stuff out.
Okay. Sweet. I love it. Now, I learned today we were talking about the dalits and, their project of ultimately writing for what would be a book, but you are also an author. And I learned that you contributed to the anthology Chicken Soup for the African American Woman's Soul, a rich collection of stories that truly celebrate the mountaintops and share the valleys of the African American woman's experience. I have loved that whole Chicken Soup series and all the offshoots of it. What was your story about?
You will like this. Audience, many years ago, Dr. Mo interviewed me when I founded my collective called the Nappy Hair Affair.
Nappy Hair, I remember. We were popping our fingers and Nappy Hair Collective.
Yes.
That's a good memory.
I love that interview. And so it was organization, and it still exists, but we used to meet regularly to get together to nurture each other, celebrate our culture through nurturing our natural hairstyles and African-inspired hairstyles. And I wrote an essay about the first hair day gathering, and it's called The Birth of a Nappy Hair Affair. It's on a piece of it's on the website. That's still up. But I submitted that to Chicken Soup, and there were 5,000 entries, and they picked 153, I believe.
Woo! You go, girl. Hi. That was when that question I asked you earlier. When did you recognize you had something special as a writer? If you hadn't before that, you should have. Because that's some long odds. They were only taking the cream of the crop right there.
Wow, it was something. It also, the first time it ran, well, it was in my book, Nappyisms, but it was in Tenderheaded. Tenderheaded is an anthology, a collection of writings about hair, black women's hair, black hair. And then I took it and put it and submitted it. Said, why not? And yes.
And look, why not indeed? And that really should be our approach to a lot of things. I think a lot of times we limit and put boundaries on ourselves because, we just underestimate our own abilities. Why not? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They said no to 4,000, however many people leads up to 150. Say 4,900, 850 people. So
that's what we grow from. I remember applying for a job. Actually, it was at U.S. News and World Report. It was for an editorial assistant job years ago when I moved. And they rejected me. They didn't hire me. They sent me a rejection letter. So I applied another time, and I sent my rejection letter, a copy of my rejection.
You did not.
I did.
Really?
As saying, I've been here before, and they hired me.
Wonderful. Hey, that had to be unique. I would have chuckled just to see that. That you had it, that you had done that, because it speaks to your persistence and your resilience as well. That would have made you memorable.
Instead of saying, they rejected me, how do I rise above the zillion people who are applying? Why not send the other rejection letters? So I've tried it.
You don't need to do this again. I've experienced rejection. Let's try acceptance. Thank you.
You don't want to do this to this poor young little 22-year-old again, do you?
Oh, funny. Never heard anybody doing that before. That is hilarious.
Yeah. So it was as a proofreader. It was how they hired me as a proofreader. And then I came on full-time as an editorial assistant for the running around and getting information for all the senior writers at the time.
Right. What a great publication to be associated with, as are many of the others that you've been associated with. So in addition to all the titles and roles and wonderful skills that you have, you're also a poet, not way off the beaten path, but still, you're a poet. Going from obituaries to poetry that's an interesting journey. And I know that you perform. I mean, like, you're a real poet, not just scribbling in your journal, and that's real poetry too, but you perform. I ask you to share a little piece with us, if you don't mind. I'd love for you to indulge us. Let folks hear from your expressive side, if you don't mind.
Okay. And I have to say this. I call myself a spoken notes artist because I can't joust with those beastly poets out there.
Yeah.
And so it's my domain, it's my safe space where I breathe. I like to say I breathe life into the notes that I write. And sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't.
Doesn't have to.
The poem that I will share, it's called Burgundy. And maybe just to top, you don't ever want to over talk the poem, but as just a quick, before you do the poem, but just as a quickie, when I would be complimented, people would compliment me a lot on things, or they compliment me and I'd say, black girls turn burgundy. I can't turn red when I blush. I turn burgundy. So this poem is called Burgundy. I turn burgundy when I blush, not fuchsia or pink or rose, but a deep, rich velvet burgundy, as smooth as Merlot, captivating, intoxicating, an intensely subtle glow, spontaneously appearing when admiration is bestowed. When I blush, my radiant gratitude is in full display, as brilliant as the sun, with uniquely perfect rays.
Bravo, that's beautiful. Dr. Angelo would be proud.
Oh my God.
Maya Angelo, she'd be proud of that. That beautiful composition, and I relate very much.
Yes.
Burgundy. You heard it right here, folks. Burgundy.
I created a t-shirt with that, Burgundy. I turn burgundy when I blush. The first line of it on my t-shirt says that.
All right. Well, Burgundy when I blush. Linda Jones, ladies and gentlemen, how about that? You are something else, lady. Amazing, amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate you sharing with us. Very, very excited about what you're doing with your programs all around. You clearly love helping other people. That's what I hear over and over, is that you have a heart for helping others heal. And that is needed in this world, in this time, in this day, in this place. So thank you for your mission. Tell folks how they can contact you, connect with you online, and learn more about the Writing Doula, Linda Jones.
They can go to my newly updated website, the Writing Doula, DOULA.com. I can be reached at Linda@thewritingdoula. That's my email. On Instagram, it's Lynn Doula _Mojo. I'm on Twitter, but just as a presence, it's the Lynn Doula. I'm not that active there, but that's how I can be reached. I'm also on LinkedIn for more background information on me. And I'm on Facebook, Linda Jones or the Writing Doula. So
always drop those in the show notes for people who aren't able to jot it down or remember like me. And so they'll be able to follow up with you once this episode is posted. And thank you for being my guest. I wish you continued success with Afro obituary and writing and teaching and poetry notes and all of that good stuff. And we'd love to come back.
Thank you. And afroobituary.com, they can find it. And that's also on my website.
Got it. Thank you so much. And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and renew. Thank you.